You ever notice how the moment you start talking about your problems, people's faces change? They'll nod, they'll smile politely, but deep down, most of them aren't really listening. And the few who are, some are not rooting for you. They're collecting information, not to help you, but to store it, remember it, and sometimes to use it against you. Here's the truth. No one tells you. The more you tell people about your struggles, the more power you give them over you. You think you're venting, releasing the pressure. And trust me, not everyone you speak to has the purest intentions. We live in a world where everyone is busy, where attention is currency, and where sympathy is often just a performance. Some are silently comparing their life to yours, feeling better that you're struggling. Some are filing away your pain, so one day they can remind you of it when it suits them. They fight it in silence. They bleed in silence. And when they finally walk back into the room, they walk in stronger, calmer, and with no sign of the battle. They just survived. And if you want to come out unbreakable, it starts with learning one thing. Stop telling everyone your problems. Most people you meet in life are dealing with their own storms. They've got their own stress, their own fears, their own endless list of things to worry about. That's the first thing you need to understand before you pour out your heart to someone. When you unload your problems onto another person, you're asking them to carry a weight that isn't theirs. And while a few rare people will genuinely be willing to carry it with you, most will either set it down the second you walk away, or they'll carry it only long enough to use it for their own advantage. This isn't because every person is cruel or selfish. It's simply human nature to prioritize our own survival, our own comfort, our own emotional space. Think about the times someone has told you their problems. If you're honest, you've had moments where you weren't fully listening. Maybe you nodded along, maybe you gave some generic advice, but in your mind you were already thinking about your own schedule, your own deadlines, your own frustrations. That's exactly what happens when you tell people your problems. They filter them through the lens of their own life. Your pain is not their priority, and the sooner you accept that, the freer you will be. Some people will pretend to care because it makes them feel like a good person. They'll give you a few, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that" lines, maybe pat you on the shoulder, but inside they're emotionally checked out. Others will genuinely listen in the moment, but once the conversation is over, your problem will fade from their mind because it doesn't directly impact their reality. And then there's another category, the dangerous one. These are the people who store your vulnerabilities like ammunition. They'll smile to your face, nod, act like they're in your corner, but later they'll bring up your struggles to others, twisting the story, framing you as weak, or using your situation to elevate themselves. This is why you must be careful with your words. Once they're out of your mouth, you can't take them back. You can't control how someone will interpret your story or where they'll take it next. A private struggle can be solved in your own time. But once it becomes public knowledge, it lives in other people's minds forever. They might move on, but they will never completely forget that you once admitted you were drowning. And in a world where perception often matters more than reality, that image of you as the person with problems can stick longer than you think. When you tell someone your problems, what you're often looking for is validation, comfort, or understanding. But here's the hard truth. You can't rely on the world to give you those things. Because even if someone does care in the moment, they can't carry the weight for you. At the end of the day, you still go home with the same situation, the same challenges, and the same responsibility to deal with them. Emotional support is nice, but it's not a solution. And if you become dependent on other people's sympathy, you'll find yourself needing it more and more, until you can't handle anything without an audience to reassure you. And let's be honest, not every ear you speak into is a safe one. Some people don't want to see you get better. They feel more comfortable knowing you're struggling because it makes their own life look better in comparison. They might subtly feed into your problems, not to help you solve them, but to keep you in a place where you're dependent on their advice or their listening ear. They'll say things like, "Oh, that's so awful, you poor thing," while secretly enjoying the drama of your life. You have to understand your problems can be entertainment for some. They fill the boredom in their day. They give them something to talk about when you're not around. There's another thing to consider. Every time you tell your problem, you relive it. You take the wound and reopen it over and over. Instead of letting it heal, you keep picking at it with words. You keep yourself stuck in the same emotional state because you're revisiting the pain instead of moving forward from it. The more people you tell, the more times you relive that pain. You might think it's helping you process it, but in reality, you're reinforcing the story in your mind, and that makes it harder to let go. It's not that you should never talk about what's bothering you. It's that you need to be intentional about who you tell and why you're telling them. If you're going to share, it should be with someone who has proven loyalty, who has demonstrated integrity, and who will keep your confidence without judgment or gossip. And even then, you should share with the intention of finding a solution, not just to vent endlessly. Venting feels good in the moment, but it rarely moves you forward. In fact, it can trap you in a cycle of emotional dependency, where you constantly need to offload to someone else instead of developing the resilience to handle things within yourself. You have to start operating from the assumption that most people have limited emotional bandwidth. They can only give so much before their own life pulls them back into their own struggles. And that's not a bad thing. It's just reality. By lowering your expectations of others, you protect yourself from the disappointment of realizing they don't care as much as you hoped they would. Instead of wasting time feeling hurt about who didn't show up for you, you shift your focus to what you can do for yourself. Because at the end of the day, the person who will always have to face your problems is you. This shift in mindset makes you stronger. It makes you less reactive and less dependent. It allows you to keep your dignity intact, even when you're going through hell. Because when you stop expecting the world to carry your weight, you stop handing out pieces of yourself to people who don't deserve them. And when you do that, something powerful happens. You realize you don't actually need as much validation as you thought you did. You realize that the solution isn't in getting more people to care. It's in caring enough about yourself to protect your energy, keep your circle small, and trust yourself to handle the storms life throws at you. That's why the smartest, strongest people don't go around broadcasting their problems to the world. They understand that attention doesn't equal help, and sympathy doesn't equal loyalty. They keep their struggles close, work on them quietly, and only share the victory when it's time to show the results. Because at the end of the day, the less you rely on others to care, the more you build the kind of strength that can't be taken away from you. And that's real power. Your energy is your most valuable currency. And every single interaction you have either invests in it or drains it. The problem is, most people spend their emotional energy without even realizing it. They give it away in conversations that go nowhere, arguments that change nothing, and endless retelling of problems to people who can't or won't help. You might think, I'm just talking. It's harmless, but it's not. Every time you share a piece of your struggle with the wrong person, you're making an emotional withdrawal from yourself, and those withdrawals add up until you're running on empty. When you constantly talk about what's wrong in your life, you're not just using words, you're using energy. You're reliving emotions that tire you out. You're replaying moments that hurt you, and you're inviting your mind to stay in a state of stress. And here's the thing, stress doesn't just exist in your mind. It shows up in your body. It affects how you sleep, how you focus, how you show up for your responsibilities. It steals from you quietly, piece by piece, until you start feeling drained for no obvious reason. That's the cost of letting your energy leak out through conversations that serve no purpose, other than to rehash the pain. You have to understand that not everyone is qualified to receive your problems. Some people don't have the capacity to hold that weight without it spilling over into something toxic. They might mean well, but they'll either dismiss your feelings, judge you for having them, or make you feel worse by projecting their own negativity onto you. Every time that happens, you're not just failing to get the support you wanted. You're losing energy because now you have to process their reaction on top of your original problem. Think about it like this. You wake up every day with a certain amount of emotional fuel. Every interaction you have either fuels your tank or drains it. If you start your morning pouring out your stress to someone who isn't equipped to help you, you're already starting your day at a loss. Now you're running through your day trying to function with less emotional strength than you woke up with. And the more you repeat that habit, the more exhausted and irritable you become. You start snapping at small things. You start feeling unmotivated. You start feeling like life is heavier than it actually is. Protecting your emotional energy starts with being intentional about where it goes. Just like you wouldn't give your bank account password to every person you meet, you can't give your emotional access to everyone who asks what's wrong. You have to decide who's earned the right to hear your struggles. And here's the truth. Very few people have earned that right. The smaller that circle, the safer you'll be. Another reason you must protect your energy is because some people will take from it without giving anything back. They'll listen to your problems, but not to help, just to compare their own life to yours, or to feel a momentary sense of superiority. And you'll walk away from that conversation feeling lighter for a second, but heavier later, because something about the exchange didn't actually comfort you. That's the trap. You think talking helped, but it only shifted the weight around without removing it. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your energy is to keep certain things to yourself and process them in private. Sit with your thoughts, write them down, work through solutions before involving anyone else. Because the less you repeat your problems out loud, the less power they have over you. You stop giving them space to grow in other people's minds. And more importantly, you stop feeding them with your own voice. There's also a deeper level to this. When you protect your emotional energy, you build resilience. You learn how to hold yourself steady in difficult moments instead of relying on constant external reassurance. That doesn't mean you should isolate yourself completely, but it does mean you should stop using other people as your emotional crutch. If every time you face a challenge, you immediately run to someone else to unload, you never give yourself the opportunity to develop the strength to stand on your own. And strength is built in the moments when you carry your own weight, not when you pass it off to someone else. Protecting your energy also means setting boundaries. It's not just about what you share, it's about what you allow into your mental space. If you're surrounded by people who are constantly negative, constantly gossiping, or constantly focused on problems rather than solutions, their energy will spill into yours. You can't guard your own mind if you're constantly absorbing other people's chaos. And that's the irony. Sometimes you think you're protecting yourself by venting to someone, but if they're living in a constant state of drama, you're actually exposing yourself to even more negativity than before. You have to be disciplined about this. Discipline with your words, discipline with your time, and discipline with your emotions. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every feeling needs to be shared. Not every problem needs an audience. The strongest people aren't the ones who have no problems. They're the ones who know how to manage them without letting the whole world in. They understand that emotional energy is finite, and once it's drained, it's hard to get back. You owe it to yourself to keep your energy where it belongs, with you. Stop scattering it by telling your problems to people who can't help, don't care, or might even use it against you. Instead, put that energy into finding solutions, into improving your situation, into becoming someone who no longer feels the need to broadcast their struggles just to feel seen. The more you do that, the more you'll notice something powerful. You won't just have more energy, you'll have more control. And control over your own emotional state is one of the greatest forms of power you can ever have. Because here's the reality, the world will always have noise, distractions, and people who want a piece of your attention. If you don't guard your energy, they'll take it without hesitation. But when you start protecting it like it's the most valuable thing you own, which it is, you stop being drained by meaningless exchanges and start being fueled by purposeful ones. That shift will change everything. Silence is one of the most underestimated strengths a person can have. In a world where everyone feels the need to speak, post, announce, and broadcast every detail of their life, being the one who holds back becomes a rare and powerful advantage. Most people can't handle silence because it makes them feel unseen. They think if they're not telling their story, their struggles, or their victories, they don't exist in the eyes of others. But here's the truth. Silence is not invisibility. Silence is strategy. It's choosing to operate on your terms instead of feeding the constant hunger for attention that surrounds you. When you choose silence, you choose control. The moment you tell someone your problem, you hand them a piece of your story. And with it, a piece of your control. They can now interpret it however they want, repeat it however they want, and judge it however they want. You can't stop them. But when you stay silent, you leave them guessing. You leave them without ammunition. You leave them with no narrative to twist, no weakness to exploit, and no certainty about where you stand. That uncertainty works in your favor. People can only work with what they know, and when you give them nothing, they can do nothing. Silence also protects your dignity in moments when emotions run high. How many times have you seen someone speak out of anger, frustration, or desperation, only to regret it later? Words spoken in the heat of the moment can't be taken back. They can create lasting damage to your reputation and relationships. But silence gives you time to think. It gives you the space to respond with intention instead of reacting impulsively. It keeps you from making moves that weaken your position. There's a reason the most disciplined people in the world are careful with their words. They understand that power is not in being the loudest, it's in being the most deliberate. When you're silent, people don't know your next step. They don't know if you're struggling or winning, hurting or thriving. That mystery forces them to respect you more because you're not giving them the easy access they've come to expect from everyone else. You're not predictable. And in life, the less predictable you are, the harder you are to manipulate. Silence doesn't mean weakness. In fact, it often takes far more strength to stay quiet than it does to speak. Speaking gives you an immediate release. It's like scratching an itch, but silence requires self-control. It requires the ability to hold on to information, to sit with discomfort, keep your plans to yourself until the time is right. And when that time comes, your words carry more weight because they're rare, intentional, and unexpected. One of the most powerful things about silence is that it creates an element of surprise. If you've been silent about your struggles and suddenly show up having conquered them, you shock people. You don't give them time to doubt you, discourage you, or sabotage you along the way. You let your actions speak for themselves, and when they do, they speak louder than any announcement you could have made in the beginning. Silence allows you to build in peace and reveal in strength. It also shields you from unnecessary opinions. The moment you speak about your problem, you open the door to advice you didn't ask for, criticism you didn't need, and judgment you didn't deserve. People will tell you what they would do, what you should do, and why what you're doing is wrong, even if they've never been in your position. Silence spares you from that noise. It keeps you from carrying the weight of other people's expectations and fears. There's another layer to this. Silence tests the people around you. When you stop telling everyone your business, you see who really pays attention. You see who checks in without needing to know all the details. You see who stays close without needing constant updates. The ones who stick around without demanding your story are the ones you can trust. Everyone else was only there for the information, the drama, or the entertainment. Some people will be uncomfortable with your silence. They'll push you to open up, to explain yourself, to fill the space with words. That's because your silence removes their ability to control the narrative. If they can't get the story from you, they can't decide how it should be told. And for some, that's unsettling. They'll try to provoke you into speaking, maybe even by saying things they know will get a reaction out of you. But the moment you take the bait, you give away your advantage. Staying silent in those moments is not about ignoring the situation. It's about choosing not to fight battles that don't deserve your energy. Silence is also a form of self-respect. You're telling yourself, I don't need to explain myself to everyone. I don't need to justify my feelings or my decisions. I know what I'm doing, and that's enough. That level of self-assurance is rare. Most people need validation to feel secure. They need others to agree with them before they can commit to a path. But when you trust yourself enough to move quietly, you stop seeking permission. You start living in a way that's free from the constant pressure to be understood. Of course, silence doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean you never speak or that you bottle everything up inside. It means you choose carefully. You share selectively. You open up only to those who have earned the right to hear your thoughts and your truth. And even then, you share with intention, not out of impulse. The more you practice silence, the more you realize how much it strengthens you. You're not just holding back words. You're holding on to your power. You're keeping control of your emotions, your plans, and your image. You're creating a life that doesn't require public approval to move forward. And when you finally do speak, your words carry weight because they're backed by thought, experience, and results. In the end, silence is not about saying nothing. It's about saying nothing until it matters. It's about choosing the moment when your words will have the greatest impact and refusing to waste them on people or situations that don't deserve them. Because once you understand the value of silence, you'll stop seeing it as empty space and start seeing it for what it really is. One of the most powerful tools you'll ever have. Complaining is easy. Anyone can do it. You don't need a plan. You don't need a strategy. You just need to open your mouth and let the frustration pour out. And the truth is, complaining feels good in the moment. It's a quick emotional release, a way to let someone else know you're upset, disappointed, or overwhelmed. But here's the problem. Complaining without action changes nothing. It doesn't solve the issue. It doesn't move you forward. And in most cases, it keeps you stuck exactly where you are. Worse, it trains your brain to look for problems instead of solutions, until finding something to complain about becomes your default way of thinking. When you live in a state of constant complaining, you're basically telling yourself and everyone around you that you're powerless. You're saying, this is my situation and all I can do is talk about it. It sends a message not just to others but to yourself that you don't believe you have the ability to change things. And over time, that mindset erodes your confidence and your resilience. You start to feel like a victim of your circumstances instead of the driver of your own life. Shifting from complaining to problem solving is one of the most powerful transformations you can make. It means replacing "why is this happening to me" with "what can I do about it?" That one change in thinking flips the script. It takes you from being reactive to being proactive. It puts the control back in your hands instead of waiting for someone else to fix things for you. The truth is, life doesn't care if you complain. Your problems won't get smaller because you talked about them more. They won't go away because you vented to your friends or posted about them online. Life responds to action. That's it. If you're not doing something about the problem, you're feeding it. You're giving it more attention, more energy, more life than it deserves. And here's the thing. Most people who listen to your complaints can't solve your problem anyway. They might sympathize, they might give advice, but the real work still falls on you. If you want something to change, you have to change it. If you want the situation to improve, you have to make moves, not speeches. That doesn't mean you should never talk about what's bothering you. It means you need to be intentional about how you talk about it. If you're bringing up a problem, it should be with the mindset of finding a way forward, not just unloading it on someone else to make yourself feel better temporarily. Before you speak, ask yourself, am I sharing this because I want a solution or because I want sympathy? If it's sympathy, keep it to yourself. If it's a solution, choose carefully who you speak to. Someone who has the wisdom, experience, or perspective to actually help you move forward. You have to train yourself to focus on what's within your control. The fastest way to drain your energy is to complain about things you can't change. The weather, the economy, the way other people behave. None of that is in your hands. What's in your hands is how you respond to it, how you adapt, and what steps you take next. When you focus on that, you move out of the role of victim and into the role of problem solver. Being a problem solver doesn't mean you won't feel frustration, disappointment, or even anger. It means you don't let those emotions become your final destination. You can feel them, acknowledge them, and then use them as fuel to figure out your next step. People who solve problems use their emotions as a signal. Something's wrong, something needs to change, and then they direct their energy toward making that change happen. When you shift into this mindset, something powerful happens. People start to respect you more. Instead of being the person who always has a complaint, you become the person who gets things done. People trust problem solvers. They look up to them. They rely on them. And the opportunities that come with being seen as capable are far greater than anything you'll get from being seen as a constant complainer. There's another benefit to focusing on solutions. It strengthens your resilience. Every time you face a problem and solve it, you're proving to yourself that you can handle more than you thought you could. That builds confidence. And confidence is like armor. The more of it you have, the less other people's opinions, judgments, or doubts can affect you. One of the most dangerous things about complaining is that it attracts more of the same. Complainers tend to find each other. They form circles where everyone feeds off each other's negativity. And before you know it, you're surrounded by people who aren't interested in getting better. They're interested in staying stuck together. If you want to change your life, you have to step out of that circle. You have to make a conscious choice to be around people who challenge you to find solutions, not people who encourage you to stay in the comfort of your complaints. Shifting from complaining to problem solving is also about building discipline. When something goes wrong, your first reaction might be to call someone and unload. But discipline means pausing, taking a breath, and asking yourself, what can I do right now to move this forward? Maybe the answer isn't immediate. Maybe it's just one small step. But one step in the right direction is worth more than 100 conversations about why you're stuck. This shift doesn't happen overnight. You've probably spent years building the habit of venting, so it will take time to replace it with action. But every time you catch yourself about to complain and instead focus on what you can do, you're rewiring your mind. You're teaching yourself to see challenges differently, not as roadblocks, but as puzzles to be solved. And here's the best part. When you start solving your problems instead of broadcasting them, your life starts to change in ways you didn't expect. You become more confident, you attract better people, you have more energy because you're not wasting it on endless discussions about what's wrong. You start seeing results, and those results motivate you to keep going. In the end, you'll have to decide who you want to be. Do you want to be the person who's always talking about the storm, or the person who figured out how to get through it? Do you want to be known for your complaints or for your ability to make things happen? Because one will keep you exactly where you are, and the other will move you forward, no matter what life throws at you. And the choice is always yours. There's a certain kind of strength that comes from doing the work in silence and letting your success speak on your behalf. Words are cheap. Anyone can say they're going to change, that they're working on themselves, that they're building something big. But talk doesn't build results. Action does. And the people who truly create impact in their lives understand that the most powerful statement you can make is not what you say, but what you show. When you let your results speak for you, you take away the need to convince anyone of who you are or what you're capable of. You stop wasting energy defending your goals, explaining your decisions, or proving your worth to people who may never believe in you anyway. Instead, you keep your head down, you do the work, and you let the outcome be the proof. The people who doubted you will see it. The people who supported you will celebrate it. And the people who underestimated you will be left with nothing to say. One of the reasons this approach is so powerful is because results are undeniable. Someone can argue with your words, twist your story, or question your motives, but they can't deny what's in front of their eyes. They can't argue with a transformation they can see. They can't dismiss an achievement that is real and measurable. Results strip away the noise and leave only the truth. There's also a deep satisfaction in proving yourself to yourself before you prove anything to anyone else. When you set a goal, work for it, and achieve it without the constant validation of others, you build a confidence that can't be shaken. You're no longer dependent on outside approval to feel successful because you've learned to recognize your own progress. That self-recognition is powerful. It fuels you to aim higher, to keep building, to keep moving forward without waiting for permission or applause. But letting your results speak for you requires patience. We live in a culture that pushes instant updates and quick announcements. People want to post every step of their journey online, partly to keep themselves accountable, but often to gain attention along the way. The problem with that is the more you talk about what you're doing, the more you open yourself up to criticism before you've even finished. You invite opinions that can shake your confidence, distractions that can pull you off course, and even sabotage from those who don't want to see you succeed. Working in silence is like building a fortress behind closed doors. No one knows how far along you are. No one can interfere with your process, and no one can plant seeds of doubt in your mind. You're free to make mistakes, adjust your approach, and grow without the weight of public expectation. And when you're ready to reveal what you've built, you do so from a place of strength, not in the middle of the struggle, but at the moment of victory. Letting results speak for you also changes the way people treat you. When you've proven you can deliver, people start to listen differently. Your words carry more weight because they're backed by a track record. Your presence commands more respect because people know you don't just talk, you do. This is how leaders are built, not through speeches about what they plan to achieve, but through a history of achievements that speak louder than anything they could say. Another advantage of this approach is that it silences the doubters without you ever having to confront them directly. When you argue with someone about what you're capable of, you're giving them your energy and validation. You're telling them their opinion matters enough for you to fight against it. But when you simply keep working and produce undeniable results, you bypass the argument entirely. You don't need to explain yourself. The proof is in the outcome. That's far more satisfying than winning a verbal debate. This doesn't mean you hide forever or downplay your success. It means you allow your success to arrive on its own terms. You don't announce it prematurely. You don't beg for recognition. You trust that the work you've done will speak for itself when it's ready. And when it does, it will be impossible to ignore. It's also important to remember that results are personal. They don't have to look the same to everyone. Your definition of success is yours alone, and you don't need to measure it by someone else's standards. For one person, a result might be building $1 million business. For another, it might be finally paying off debt, earning a degree, or becoming healthier and stronger. Whatever it is for you, own it. Don't let anyone diminish it because it doesn't match their version of achievement. The beauty of letting your results speak is that it builds credibility over time. You become known as someone who delivers, someone whose actions align with their words, and that reputation follows you into every new challenge you take on. Opportunities start coming to you because people trust your ability to follow through. That's when momentum really starts to work in your favor. You're no longer chasing every opportunity because your track record is attracting them to you. But here's the key. You have to stay consistent. Letting your results speak for you isn't a one-time thing. It's a way of life. It means showing up even when no one's watching, even when no one's cheering you on. It means doing the work in the quiet, boring moments when motivation is low and discipline is the only thing carrying you. And it means being willing to stay the course for as long as it takes to turn effort into evidence. In the end, talking about your problems, your plans, or your dreams means very little if you never back it up with results. The world doesn't remember the speeches. It remembers the outcomes. So stop giving so much power to your words and start giving it to your actions. Build in silence. Work relentlessly. Protect your vision until it's strong enough to stand on its own. And when the time comes, let your success walk into the room before you do. That's the kind of introduction that speaks louder than anything you could ever say. At the end of the day, the world won't remember what you promised, what you said, or how loudly you declared your ambitions. It will remember what you built, what you delivered, and the difference you made. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to create something so undeniable that it speaks for itself. Stop explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds. Stop wasting breath trying to convince the ones who don't believe in you. Take that energy and put it into action. Every hour you work in silence is a brick in the foundation of a future they can't ignore. Because here's the truth. Talk fades, excuses fade, opinions fade. But results, they last. They stand long after the noise is gone. So keep your head down, keep your heart focused, and keep moving forward. Let your work echo louder than your words. One day you won't need to introduce yourself. Your results will walk into the room before you do. And they'll speak so powerfully. They won't need translation. That is real power. That is real success. And that is the life you're building starting now.